Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Sir, I'd like to get your reaction to what you heard from President Trump this morning as it related to a different storm, Hurricane Maria, and the tweets that we've been talking about where he diminished the death toll number, said he didn't believe them.
Well, I've heard many of those comments from the president the last few days. My advice to the president is this, and I'll give him my best retired military advice. You should never blame the survivors or the victim of a natural disaster for attributing to anything that happened to them. That's just bad protocol. Every first responder, that when you go get someone who should have evacuated, you hug them, you try to praise the fact that they live, and you take them to safety. But never should we ever talk about those who survive a natural disaster as if they did something to cause this to happen to themselves. Point two to the president. And if I was his boss or standing next to him as his chief of staff, I would kick him on the ankle and say, look, focus on the future damn storm. Stop looking in the rearview mirror. Focus on the future storm. Stop looking at the last storm. Avoid any conversations about the last storm. Focus on this future storm. That would be my advice to my president of the United States, because he's our president.
A couple questions to follow up on that for you. Do you believe there is a danger to the president, as you put it, looking to the past rather than looking to the future when it comes to people who right now are at a critical moment deciding whether to stay or go?
I think that's just nervous energy, probably saying things like that on Twitter. But I'm confident. I do think FEMA is fully focused. I think the governors who in these storms, they're the principal leaders in storm response. It's not the president. What happened inside those states by our Constitution goes to the senior elected official, and they're in charge of what happens in those states. And from what I've seen, those governors are on it. They are mobilizing National Guard. They are executing agreements with other states to bring additional Guard assets in. And they've opened the way for federal troops to start deploying, to be prepared to come in, everything from ships to search and rescue helicopters all the way from Alaska. So the quarterback of this show is not the president. It's the governor of the state. They've got to ask for what they need, and it's the job of the federal government, FEMA, and all of government to respond and provide what those governors need. And that being said, I think the president will do well to start that message he talked about yesterday, warning people to evacuate, and that if the governors need something, the federal government would provide it. I think that's the message he needs to be on, and he'll be on better ground and take a lot of left's flack from some of this, looking back at the last storm.
General Honore, you've been very clear and explicit in your advice to President Trump. Why do you believe he is struggling to take that advice or use that?
I can't imagine. He wasn't born a politician, but he sure in the hell act like one. Won't admit to nothing and deflects it. And I think that's something he needs to grow out of. He we have used Katrina to measure presidents. Did they have a Katrina moment? Meaning, wasn't paying attention to what was going on. Well, he had his Katrina moment. It's called Maria. And the picture everybody will remember is those paper towels going out and throwing them. And, oh, by the way, giving himself an A. I think he needs to move on. And let's see, everybody can live and learn. And let's see if he can focus on Florence, stay off the damn golf course, and cheer these troops on who out on ships out on sea, flying helicopters and airplanes trying to get ready to come while their families stay ashore and have to evacuate separately. We got a lot of young soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines out there that are getting ready to respond along with our National Guard. And that's the people he ought to be cheering on. And I hope to see him in North Carolina or South Carolina and not on a golf course this weekend.
General, before I let you go, one thing that has been striking when you listen to the response from federal officials, including, for example, Brock Long at FEMA, is talking about the lessons learned, and particularly the lessons learned from Katrina. Do you believe that the federal government has learned enough from the response to the storm to Katrina, which you know well, over the years? Are they at a better place now? Are they where they need to be?
Well, we went through the Obama years with let's wait for the governors to ask for the military to help. And now, after Maria, everybody sees, hey, we've got to start maneuvering the military in behind these big storms. We can't wait for the governors to ask individually, hey, I'd like a ship to come in, or I want a hospital ship. It's the incumbent on the National Security Council giving instructions to Brock Long how he get those assets to maneuver on the storm. Had we maneuvered on Maria like we maneuvered on Hurricane Irma, we could have done a better job in trying to get there earlier and helping people quicker. That being said, it's time to focus on this storm, and I hope that's what the National Security Council is helping Brock Long figure out how all of government can help respond, because the guy on the button is the governor.
It is Friday, the 14th of September of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, folks, because the French 77 is the most versatile cocktail in the world, whether disaster or joy. Yes, it is the perfect way to imbibe either impending doom or the joy of a new sunny day. Hope you have one, because they're having a, kind of a battering ram hitting them on the Carolinas. You just know Trump's going to tweet out that the historic rain levels along the Carolinas will be an unsung success. People won't talk about how great it was that it happened on his watch. Oh, yes, we will. Of course, I also read somewhere that he fears this will be his Katrina. I don't, but these are the same people that had to explain to him what a hurricane is. I mean, is this the master race? He was born into wealth and privilege, and he doesn't know the basics of barometric pressure? So much for noblesse oblige. Yeah, don't do us any favors, Donnie. Okay? Stop it. Really. Yeah, well, Lieutenant General Honore blasted Trump, and well, he should. Well, this is the big lie. 3,000 dead in Puerto Rico is a Democratic hoax to make Donnie look bad. Yeah, well, 6 million in the Holocaust is fake news to make Adolf look bad, too. That's how they think. They already have their propaganda machine, the Lou Dobbs and the rest of the Fox propaganda shop, perpetuating this big lie. Okay. Well, on the other hand, there was a drubbing. All across the nation had elections last night. New York in particular. I know New York is complex. All you need to know is that everybody has to be a Democrat. And there's Republican Democrats, and there's Democrats, and then there's like progressives. And the progressives and the Democrats are really kind of like the same. But they have to deal with the Republican Democrats. And the Greens are just there to muck everything up at 1% to 2%, as they were meant to. You know, the little scum that kind of collects there along the reeds at the bank of the pond. All right, I've only had none of French 77 so far, but I will. So you can't blame it on that. It's Friday, though. It's almost like an Anything Goes Friday, but we can't because we've curated a show, actually. And maybe, well, yeah, we better get on with what we're going to attend to today because there's so much more going on with the old Trump thing. I had to put a cap on it. We always do. Well, as I mentioned, the great general there, Lieutenant General, I mean, he's the one that came in and snapped everybody into order at Katrina. So he knows of what he speaks. And, but all that's going to fall on deaf ears with Donnie. He's got bigger fish to fry, and that's making sure that he kicks up some tribute to Vlad. I think there's another installment due. On the rest of the menu on the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life, folks. Mm-hmm. A group of racist, homophobic San Francisco cops will finally be fired after a 3-year-long court saga. Well, the San Francisco Police Department has a long history of that. And, I guess maybe by attrition, they'll be scrubbed of it. But we'll see. A former Afghan refugee ousted the 4-term Democratic incumbent in the New Hampshire state legislature primary. Well. And if she beats the GOP fellow, she will be the first refugee of any ilk, and first of all, a Muslim, who actually holds office in New Hampshire. First one. Maybe even more. And the GOP Senate candidate trying to unseat Montana's John Tester may have just been busted admitting to illegal collusion with the NRA. Their crimes are so natural to them, they don't think that talking about it is a bad thing. They think everybody does it until they realize there's cops around. Yeah, it's called the American people. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where former NSA chief Michael Rogers revealed that Trump doesn't believe the Russians hacked the U.S., and he never will. Yeah, confirmation bias. And SpaceX announces a new plan to send a tourist around the moon, duty-free. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, and a beautiful homepage it is. Thank you, Tom. The homepage is seasonal, and as we get closer and closer to the election, we do have a big push to get out the vote right now. And one of the basics of voting is making sure that you are eligible to vote, even if you've been voting all your life, and you're I don't know, ancient. They may just determine that you are not from here. You prove it. And you go, well, I was born here. They go, so? That doesn't mean anything anymore. So if you are not supposedly eligible to vote because you've been kicked off or whatever, there are also links there in which you can find out how to get registered to vote and register to vote. So form and function on our homepage, the perfect balance in life. Yes, it's an aesthetic. That's why we have the French 77 on Fridays. Alrighty. Okay, so go to the bottom of our homepage. To the rightish of the homepage is the chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Check out her show during the afternoon, early evening on Saturday at the table with Kelly Lincoln. And then later on, Kelly and Ricky take over the airwaves here at Netroots Radio with the Roundtable Roundhouse Power Hour. So check that out and check out the calendar there. On our homepage. So to the leftish from the chat room link is the contribute button with Patreon. And can you become a Patreon of Netroots Radio and all that we bring you? Please. I hate making these entreaties, but that's what we have to do because we are unable to do this without you. And the lights are blinking but I have to warn you, machines are getting worn out. So I better start thinking about it. It's like, you plant a seed and hopefully it grows. Okay, so thank you for your generosity on that. And do become a Patreon. You can do whatever you want, and there's a few tiers there in which you can become a Patreon. Alrighty. So you can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Check us out on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary. Very important. This is a multimedia operation here. And you're going to get a lot more and actual, concrete journalistic type stuff rather than my going off. Okay, because that's what we do here. But I post that at Daily Co's, and I can be found there as Justice Putnam. You can follow the show on Facebook, and you can do that. And we are on Twitter at Cookbook West. Pick up podcasts of the show by way of Stitcher, Spreaker, iTunes, TuneIn, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. Okay, first article here is out of Think Progress by Alan Pike. I lived in San Francisco proper, not just out in the avenues. Now, I lived out in the avenues. I lived out near Lakeshore, and also lived right above Polk Street on Russian Hill. And, I lived in the Upper Haight for a couple of years. Where else? Around Waller, if anybody knows about that. But I was all over San Francisco proper, plus the Bay Area. And even before I moved to the Bay Area, I had a couple of run-ins with some San Francisco cops, and I thought, wow, this is like Chicago. And somebody said, no, it's just like San Francisco. And I went, oh, yeah, don't need to conflate it. Dirty Harry had to come from somewhere, and he didn't come from Chicago. A group of San Francisco police officers who've enjoyed roughly 3 years of paid leave while challenging their dismissals in court may finally be fired for sending reams of racist, homophobic texts to one another, judges decided on Wednesday. The California Supreme Court declined to hear the officers' case, opening the door for city officials to finalize the group firings they initiated in 2015. More than a dozen officers were shown exchanging jokes about burning crosses and slurring the citizens they served in text messages exposed by the corruption trial of former Sergeant Ian Firminger. Now, I should mention, not one of these cops live in San Francisco. Yeah. They always move out somewhere else. Because if you're close to the people you're policing, how can you properly and effectively make them comply if they're your friend? Firminger was eventually sentenced to less than 4 years in prison for a slew of criminal acts under color of law, Some of the officers whose biases were on display in the text resigned quickly, but 9 of the 14 decided to fight for their jobs and paychecks. Initially, a lower court held that too much time had passed between when the texts were sent and when the officers were disciplined, but a state appeals court overturned that finding because city officials had not been privy to the texts until after Firminger was charged. The ping-ponging appeals lingered for 3 years in the state's courts until Wednesday's decision to decline a final high court hearing. The officers were kept on the city's payroll throughout that time after a judge rejected the department's initial move to suspend them without pay pending the case's resolution. The city had paid the officers $2 million not to work as of this spring. Though the city's now prevailed on the question of which timeline should apply to its disciplinary decisions in the scandal, the officers' legal team raised points that suggest the department's handling of TextGate was motivated more by public outcry than a sincere belief that the officers' use of hate speech and private chatter could and should disqualify them from public safety work. Well, I don't know about you. I think that people are joking around like this are not the kind of cops that you want to have in your police department. Okay, the case languid path to resolution typifies the immense and specialized protections that police officers enjoy from basic accountability. Well, of course. How else could an off-duty cop get pissed off at her upstairs neighbor, pound on his door, go into his apartment, shoot him dead, and then have a search warrant issued, search his apartment until they find a few specks of pot? Because you're either a cop or you're little people. Rebecca and Tralgo, also of Think Progress, brings us this next offering here at the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Yes, the French 77s are mixed and ready to pour. Safia Wazir, a 27-year-old former refugee from Afghanistan who is now an American citizen, beat out four-term New Hampshire State Representative Dick Patton, a Democrat, in the New Hampshire primary. If she defeats her Republican opponent in November, Wazir would become the first refugee to ever serve in public office in the state. She emigrated to Concord, New Hampshire about 11 years ago as the Taliban consolidated power in Afghanistan. Patton ran a negative campaign against Wazir, claiming her lack of experience and refugee status would harm her chance of winning. I don't know. I thought we were a nation of refugees. Some of us still remember that. Wazir, who was running for office while pregnant, campaigned on middle-class issues that mobilized voters, including enacting paid family leave and Medicaid expansion. She knocked on thousands of doors across District 17, connecting with voters, and highlighted her years of community activism. They were very excited there was someone new running it for the State House, Wazir told the Concord Monitor. It gives them so much energy to be backed from the people themselves. It's driven me to be positive. In recent years, there have been a wave of refugees running in both State House and congressional races. Last August, former Minnesota State Representative Ilhan Omar and Somali refugee won the primary for Representative Keith Ellison's congressional seat. And if she wins the general election in November, She will become one of the first Muslim women to ever serve in Congress. Up here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, is an article out of Think Progress as well, this time by Frank Dale. Matt Rosendale claimed he was promised NRA support. Then the NRA spent over $400,000 in his campaign. Oops! Looks like potential illegal coordination between the NRA and old Matt Rosendale was caught on tape. John Tester is locked in a tough re-election battle in a state Donald Trump won by over 20 percentage points in 2016. Tester apparently also has to worry about potential illegal coordination between his opponent and the NRA, according to exclusive audio obtained by the Daily Beast. In the recording, Republican Senate candidate Matt Rosendale can be heard acknowledging that he was told he would receive financial support from Chris Cox, head of NRA's lobbying efforts. Rosendale's remarks were recorded at a July event in Washington, D.C., the NRA's Institute for Legislative Action, which Cox oversees, and then eventually spent over $400,000 on advertisements opposing Tester. Well, I guess they could say, well, we're going to do that anyway. Well, I guess they could try. The FEC says illegal coordination happens when a communication is made in cooperation, consultation, or at the request or suggestion of a candidate or candidate's agent, committee, or political party. Groups like the NRA can raise and spend unlimited amounts on elections if they operate independently of candidates. Well, Tester recently criticized Rosendale over his claim of being a rancher, despite having no record of cattle sales. And Trump appeared with the Montana Republican at a rally last week and also endorsed him via Twitter, because that's the only place that matters now. All right. And do we really know it was Trump? I mean, it could have been Stephen Miller. Well, let's get to our break. Recharge our batteries because, well, Sprint 77 will do that until it knocks you on your butt. No more than 2 in real life, please. We'll come back after said break, go through weather from around the world, and then we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, something old, something new. Searching, by USC Film School buds, co-writers, and director-producer duo Anish Chaganty and Sev Ohanian, is a strange yet appealing beast. The audience sees the entire film through various screens from computers, phones, security cams, etc. We watch conversations take place in FaceTime, in emails, and in chat messages, and the excitement of the chase is taken over by the excitement of the click. However, Searching is not a movie about technology. It's not a movie about social media. It's an even-handed thriller about a man who loses connection with his teenage daughter after the death of his wife, her mother, and then physically loses his daughter when she goes missing. That's because Chiganti and Ohanian aren't interested in making gimmick films. In fact, when production company Bazilyev's pitched them this, their first feature film, looking to follow the footsteps of 2014's Unfriended, Chiganti turned them down. That's because Chiganti and Ohanian want to make films that emotionally move people. And Searching does so through 3 vehicles. An opening that approaches the opening of Pixar's Up, the quiet, solid acting job of Michelle Law, and the film's anchorman John Cho, whose face is just a map to a world of feelings. But here's the thing. Even though our protagonist's family is played by Cho, Law, and Joseph Lee as brother/uncle, Searching is not a film about being Asian either. It's a thriller about a middle-class American family, and guess what? For once that family isn't white. And while we need films that celebrate cultural difference, performing artists of color have said for years that they are not summed up by the fact that they are not white. And Searching is a testament to the fact that movies like this that almost always feature white protagonists don't have to. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Homo sapiens are nowhere near the fastest runners in the animal kingdom, but what we lack in speed, we make up for in endurance. And we're specially equipped to go the distance. We've got bigger butt muscles than other primates, we lost most of our fur, too, and sprouted lots of sweat glands to help us cool off. Scientists believe our endurance-running abilities began to appear 2 to 3 million years ago, around the time the genus Homo came about. And a new study suggests that a mutation in one key gene had something to do with it. The mutation in what's called the CMAH gene altered the types of sugar molecules that decorate the surfaces of every cell in our bodies, which in turn may have made our muscles less prone to fatigue. Researchers have now found that mice bred with that same mutation can run longer without tiring, compared to regular mice. The mice with the gene alteration also logged more miles running on their wheels, apparently for fun. And they had more capillaries in their back leg muscles, which would increase the delivery of nutrients and oxygen during endurance exercise. The complete stats are in the Proceedings of the Royal Society B. It's unclear if this small genetic tweak endows humans with the same benefits as the mice, but if it does, it could help explain how early humans got a leg up on their competitors. Or really, 2 legs.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. After a storm or disaster, it's important to eat only safe food. Throw away perishables like meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and leftovers stored above 40 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours or more. Throw away food with an unusual odor, color, or texture. Throw away food that may have come in contact with floodwater, including food in swollen, punctured, and damaged cans. When in doubt, throw it out.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
Joseph Wood, a double murderer, while on death row, sued the state of Arizona to learn about the drugs that the state planned to use to kill him. He lost. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. At his execution in 2014, Wood, for 2 hours, snorted and gasped for air while 15 rounds of drugs were administered to him. He finally died. The First Amendment Coalition picked up Wood's lawsuit, claiming that the public has a right to witness all steps in an execution and know about the execution drugs and the qualifications of the employees administering them. On September 12th, the federal Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals heard the case. Much of the oral argument focused on the executioners cutting off the microphones, so no one could hear what was happening while the drugs were being prepared for injection and when the IV was being inserted. Although Arizona has not executed a prisoner since the debacle of the execution of Joseph Wood, there still remain on death row in that state 117 inmates, 114 male and 3 female. Leave aside for a moment, if you can, the Eighth Amendment prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment and consider this matter from a First Amendment perspective. The result should be clear. After all, if the state is going to, with premeditation, kill people, we, the public, have a right to know what the government is doing in our name. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1913. That was the day Philadelphia longshoremen walked off the job. Led by the industrial workers of the world, the strike was remarkable for its militancy, its industrial unionism, and its interracial organizing. The Wobblies had been fighting to organize workers in the city for years. Unionizing efforts included Amalgamated Local 57, which organized workers across whole industries. Attracted to the IWW's message of interracial unionism, black longshoreman Ben Fletcher joined up readily and soon emerged as an early leader of Local 57 and then Longshoremen's Local 8. In his book, Wobblies on the Waterfront, historian Peter Cole notes the origins of the local started with the striking sugar refinery workers on the banks of the Delaware. Dockers made contact with the IWW during the strike and drew up a list of grievances and demands. And by this day in 1913, 1,500 longshoremen struck for a leveling of the hourly wage for all workers, regardless of skill, shorter hours, and union recognition. They held strike meetings every day and elected a committee of 15 with representatives from every ethnic and racial group. Cole notes this was crucial, given the diversity of the dock's 4,000 workers. More than a third were black, another third were immigrants. The committee included Poles, Jews, blacks, Irish, and others. Strikers took on their employers and also the police. Beatings, intimidation, and arrests of strikers occurred daily and intensified as the ship owners attempted to herd in scabs. 1,200 coal and iron ore handlers joined in on the strike. The port was solidly shut down, and by the end of the month, the shippers were forced to concede to most of the Wobblies' demands. Industrial unionism and interracial solidarity had won the day.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
I'm Mark Boulanger. The G20 is a group of governments which works internationally to address questions such as economic stability during crises like the recession of 2008. It is paralleled by the L20, the Labour 20. At the beginning of September, the G20 labor and employment ministers met in Argentina with representatives of the L20 labor group. I talked to Pierre Habar about the meeting. Mr. Habar is the General Secretary of the Trade Union Advisory Committee of the OECD. TUAC just recently had its 70th anniversary. I asked Mr. Habar about the meeting of the labor and government representatives in the L and G20 groups.
At the outset, it's perhaps important to highlight that the G20 as a whole, that there is perhaps a changing role for that forum. It was created in its current format back in 2008, 2009, right after, in response to the global financial crisis. At that time, it was very much about coordinating economic policy, coordinating government action to to exit the crisis. Since then, it has gradually become a forum for setting broad principles for reform, broad principles for structural reforms, and also to lay out the key issues that pave the ways for us when it comes to future challenges, digitalization, climate change, and so on. So we engaged with the employment minister, which met in Mendoza last week. What we did is, with a statement, we reasserted the basics of what the labor movement has been calling and is calling and is about: right to collective bargaining, robust minimum wages, coverage of social protection, responsible business conduct, responsible business in global supply chain, and address new challenges, migration, climate change, and engage with the ministers on the future work, the challenges associated with non-standard forms of work. In the end, what we did with the G20, we engaged on all those issues, but we also reminded the employment ministers, and beyond that, the G20, the initial mandate of this forum, which is to get our economies back on track, because 10 years after the crisis, we are still far away from a recovery in employment when it comes to quality of employment and quantity. And the major constraint that we're facing today is the unresolved issue of rising inequality. In many countries, wage growth is flat, and the main barrier to sustainable growth is indeed constraints that are on wages. So with that, we've been having a dual message, a two-track proposition to the employment ministers. First of all, yes, indeed, discuss the broad principles for growth, collective bargaining, minimum wage, social protection, and so on, but also take action now to address effectively the fall of the labor share of income, which is at the heart of the rise of inequality, and explain why today in many countries wage growth is flat 10 years after the crisis.
As you mentioned, the future of work was raised in the G20, L20 meetings. What issues were raised?
The future of work is a broad term that is used to address all the employment and labor challenges associated with digital transformation and the combination of digitalization and globalization. There is obviously a quantitative aspect to that conversation. Where are the new jobs to be created? It is not the first time, and I guess it's not the last time, that the labor movement will have to face such a technological change, a technological leap. We have faced these changes in the past. What characterizes digital transformation, and that's why there's so much conversation around this future of work term, is that when you combine digitalization with globalization, well, it does pose not only quantitative issues, but also qualitative aspects, because with digitalization, in many instances, you allow employers to keep control of workers, to keep supervision of workers via data exploitation, but at arm's length. And hence, digitalization, to a large extent, allow employers to escape their employer responsibilities.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. A new investigation by The Guardian finds that fake social media accounts created by an infamous troll farm with ties to the Russian government have been quoted more than 100 times by prominent news outlets in recent years. BuzzFeed, The Telegraph, the BBC, and The Guardian each embedded or mentioned Twitter posts from fraudulent accounts in their reporting. Those accounts, which purported to back the Black Lives Matter movement or advocate for President Trump's impeachment, were mere imposters, their messages crafted at the St. Petersburg-based Internet Research Agency.
The Russian presence in social media is deep and complicated, and that's old Cold War-era active measures playbook.
Christopher Paul is a senior social scientist at the RAND Corporation.
Even back in the 60s, they would place a source in kind of a low visibility place and then hope that someone would pick that up and echo it and bring it out to the mainstream.
Paul says social media platforms could address the problem by implementing new identity verification measures.
In the same way that we have a one person, one vote, wouldn't it be great if we had a one person, one voice paradigm?
Tying social media accounts to verified identities could clean up some spam It could also have unintended consequences.
What about in nascent democracies, proto-democracies, or pre-democracies, places where it's still a bit authoritarian, where anonymous internet voices are a way to be safe and to have political discourse without having the personal risk associated with your own actual verified name?
For now, Paul says social media companies are unlikely to take steps that could slash their active user base, leaving the media as a key defense against trolls. That starts with talking to real sources and leaving the business of curating social media posts to entertainment sites, not journalists. Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. Oh, indeed. Well, the French 77s have been mixed and poured for your pleasure, so do it virtually and have some in real life. They're grand. Okay. As I have mentioned before, the most balanced cocktail in the history of cocktails. And it is actually one of those cocktails that works in any situation, any occasion, whether disaster or joy. All right. Weather from around the world always begins along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 60 degrees. Now, this is hard because the weather station that we are now drawing data from is at altitude, and it's not nearly as cold here or chilly as it is at altitude. And so my thermometer, digital thermometer, which is not within eyesight, was at 57 degrees, and Weather Underground is saying it's 60. But I'm going to go with mine since it's a microclimate here at the mothership. So we're at 57 degrees, expected to have a high of nearly the same as yesterday, which was 74. Yeah, okay, so mid-70s. Overnight lows in the low to mid-50s, and highs tomorrow and through the weekend in the low to mid-70s. So that sounds like moving into a nice fall. I guess I got to get my Brussels sprouts in. I better hurry. We have a small chance of rain tonight, though we will be sunny today. And same small smidgen of possibility of precipitation. We always hold on to it because it might happen. Just north of us, though, it's raining the proverbial cats and dogs. And when I say just north of us, on the other side of the pass, and the other side of that little range that comes here into southern Oregon and then moves you more into the Willamette Valley proper. So, I don't know, about 45 minutes away. But maybe it'll get enough to push over the pass and come down and visit us. It would be nice. I think it would. Okay, so we have right now moderate ragweed pollen. I'm doing okay. I'm not really allergic to ragweed. It's something else that sometimes gets me. I think it's like wildfire smoke. Well, of course, or fortunately, the air quality index is rated good at 36 parts per million, so that's come down a little bit. And the daytime UV index is pegged at high, down from the very high that it had been for months. And it's down to 6. And we'll probably stay there until we really get the really thick overcast. All right, high pressure is still dominating right now in the region at 30.29 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles, and that relative humidity is at 84%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted. These purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. It's Friday, and that's my P-tape. Pop the P's or not. Okay. London is 64 degrees and mostly cloudy. Paris is 70 degrees and sunny. Rome is 83 degrees and sunny. Kiev is 78 degrees and fair. Kabul is 71 degrees and fair. No honeymoon, no wedding parties on this weekend. Okay? Fair weather means it'll be raining drone bombs. Don't do it. You'll have much more fun during a really rainy or snowy day. Wait for the snow. Okay, Hong Kong, 80 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 69 degrees with rain. Sydney, Australia is 61 degrees and clear. San Francisco is 53 degrees Fahrenheit and mostly cloudy. And New York is 71 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased, and these people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. David Bradish of the New Civil Rights Movement brings us this first offering here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Donald Trump has, on a handful of occasions, been forced to publicly state he believes Russia attacked the U.S. election that placed him in the White House, but no one actually thinks he believes it. Trump, countless times, has made very clear he believes the very idea of Russia hacking the U.S. is a hoax, and the investigation into Russian interference is a witch hunt. One of the few people who would know firsthand exactly how Trump thinks about Russia and its attacks on America is Trump's own former director of the National Security Agency, retired Admiral Mike Rogers. Speaking on Tuesday on a panel discussion at George Mason University's Hayden Center for Intelligence, and I believe George Mason is where Kagro went, Admiral Rogers delivered a stunning revelation about just how removed from reality the Commander-in-Chief is. Now, I checked the Netroots Radio Style Manual. We are really encouraged not to use the P word with Trump, president. But there's nothing about Commander-in-Chief. We're going to have to send an inquiry about that one. All right. He would often say to me, Mike, I'm in a different place on Russian hacking, Rogers told the audience. The assessment that Russia interfered in the U.S. election is not disputable, and the general consensus of all U.S. intelligence agencies is that it happened and continues to happen. And I might add, not just all of our intelligence agencies, but our allies too, who are now conveniently the enemy. Isn't that convenient? Sir, this isn't about politics. It isn't about party. It's about a foreign state that is attempting to subvert the very tenets of our structure, Rogers said he told Trump. And I'm sure that Trump went back thinking, you have no idea how much money I got to kick up to Vlad. I have made promises. I have to keep. This debt I have to pay.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout. c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Finishing up here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays is an article out of the Agence France Presse by anonymous worker bees there. SpaceX announced a new plan to launch a tourist, around the moon using its big Falcon rocket, the BFR. A massive launch vehicle that is being designed to carry people into deep space. Yeah, but can they bring them back? We don't know about that yet. SpaceX has signed the world's first private passenger to fly around the moon aboard our BFR launch vehicle, an important step toward enabling access for everyday people who dream of traveling to space. So they signed the world's first private passenger. Well. SpaceX gave no further details, but said more information would follow on Monday because, you don't roll out new products until, the end of the month. This is not the first time the California-based company headed by internet entrepreneur and Tesla electric car CEO Elon Musk has touted plans to send tourists around the moon. So, he's had these plans even before he started toking in public. In February of 2017, SpaceX announced it would send the world's first 2 space tourists around the moon in late 2018. Well, yeah, that plan called for them to ride on a Dragon crew vehicle similar to the cargo ships that SpaceX routinely sends loaded with supplies to the International Space Station. They would have blasted off aboard a Falcon Heavy rocket, however. The company has remained mum about those plans in recent months. The names and identities of those 2 tourists and how much they intended to pay to risk their lives were never revealed. SpaceX declined Agence France Presse request for more details, but said further information would follow on Monday at an event lasting from 0:30 GMT to 0200 GMT. And that would be 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Humans have not set foot on the moon since the final Apollo mission in 1972, capping an era of U.S. national pride. American astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first 2 men to explore the lunar surface in 1969, a moment seen and heard around the world when Armstrong declared 1 small step for man, 1 giant leap for mankind. That only 24 people in history have ever been to the moon. SpaceX is a key commercial partner to NASA, putting people's lives in the hands of the lowest bidder. Making America great again, and again, and again. Hey, it's the weekend, and there's going to be so much news happening over the weekend, we won't be able to stand it. And Netroots Radio will be broadcasting with all that breaking news as it happens, so stay tuned to that. We'll visit with you on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. And do stay tuned to Netroots Radio throughout the day and throughout the weekend, and we will visit with you on Monday in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte coeur. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.